Iranian-Australian filmmaker Amin Palangi brings his distinct style to his award-winning work from short films to documentaries, always centering heart and experience. This year, Tennessine will debut at the 2023 Sydney Film Festival, a sensual psychological drama in which an Iranian arrives in Australia to reunite with his lover. Amin Palangi, thank you so much and welcome to the For Your Reference podcast.
Thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
I am very excited to talk about Tennessine. I'm very excited to talk about this film. What I wanted to start with was the visual sort of story, the visual sort of language. There was some gorgeous, sprawling aerial and wide shots of the landscape that was used in the film. And I would love to talk a little bit of how that visual style came to life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a number of things that we thought about that I had made a short film entitled Break in the same location, which sort of gave me the inspiration for this film. And it was literally, it was a small team. The house that we shot in the location belonged to a close friend of mine. So it was somewhere that I used to holiday in, if you like. And I was always just blown away. By the emptiness, by the sense of isolation, but also beauty. It was this
Yeah.
contrasting factors between the sort of, as in, particularly if you've come to Australia, it is what you expect of Australia to be like. But it is not something or somewhere that we live in particularly. So this contrast really interested me, and I wanted to make a film there. And I think the other thing was to as I mentioned, is this harsh reality perhaps around stepping into a new land and not only experiencing or questioning your identity, your priorities. It's also being surrounded by the unfamiliarity of a new country.
Yeah.
That are beautiful at the same time, but
Yeah.
they're also you're in a strange place and strange land. Yeah.
There are some delicious themes. There are some delicious themes I definitely want to get into with you today. But something that I just found really effective and really impressive was, even the visuals of the fire, and you would hear the crackling of the fire, or even in the early sort of moments when no one else is awake, you'll hear the birds. There was some funny dialogue about the birds in Australia as well. But it's just it helps to bring together that sort of experience of understanding, where we are in this sort of narrative with Arash as well as Nazanin, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually what I wanted to come to. There's a commentary about being Iranian or Iran throughout the film. Not too much spoilers, but Nazanin mentions how she does miss Iran, but she didn't ask to be displaced. And it's those sorts of moments that really make the film. When making a film, how do you balance focusing on the main story, but also incorporating dialogue like this to ensure that it speaks to audiences?
Thanks for your very careful viewing of the film and sort of picking up on those themes. Obviously, as an Iranian migrant, and also, with our writer Osama Sami, who was Iraqi originally, was born in Iran, and I think we share an experience there. And in light of recent events in Iran, this film was written before this, but it's sort of the narrative hasn't changed. I think about what is happening in Iran. I'm glad that now it's highlighted and it is sort of is being known internationally, and we have like that attention for what particularly women in Iran are standing for and doing, and for our film. So to even give a little glimpse, as I mentioned, the film was made and written before these events, but I can see that the themes haven't changed, and perhaps we were sort of for Sama and I were quite we're speaking from the heart, and I can see that like that's sort of showing through the film. We weren't particularly like trying to embed any messages as such.
It comes naturally.
It just
right?
came naturally.
Yeah.
Yes, perhaps it's a common story because most people who migrate, and particularly from Iran, when they leave the country, it is, they're hoping for a better future, for, I guess, for freedom.
Yeah.
And it's quite natural. And a lot of
Yeah.
them, either can't go back or don't really see a place for
Mm-hmm.
themselves back there. So, as I mentioned, yeah, I think it just sort of came quite naturally,
Yeah.
pinpointing the internal struggle of characters as well as, I guess, what you see externally between them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, like you're saying, you're already tapped in. You don't need a cultural consultant to like come in and tell you where to put bits of the dialogue and that sort of thing, right? Um,
Yes. Yeah.
the core of this film for me was love and understanding that love can and does shrink or it can expand throughout a relationship, if it's just Arash or even between the two of them as well. I'd love to hear more about the exploration of self-love, relational love, I guess loving a new country as well. Very big question,
Yes.
so sorry.
No, no, it's all right. I mean, because you're hitting the nail quite well. It's obviously, I mean, even in my previous film, Love, Marriage in Kabul, was about love. It was in documentary form and in another country. But I am quite interested in relationship dramas, the nuances and
Yeah.
the compromises, the difficulty of, I guess, managing personal expectations and relationship
Mm-hmm.
expectations, um, just through observation, personal experiences, and I'm sure Osamu's personal experiences. This is how this is
Yeah.
sort of, it's on paper, so it's fiction, but it's sort of obviously there is a level of truth and authenticity to what we have both created here. In terms of, you know, I look at migration like an interruption in someone's life, and the way this interruption affects you. And I think it takes a little bit of time to unravel. And that's why we decided that, Nazanin's character has been here for a while and
Yeah.
Arash has just landed, because there's like a level of difference. You're hoping, when I look at Nazanin's perspective, I think she's hoping for Arash to see her as a new person because she has changed, perhaps
Mm-hmm.
even more than she has admitted to herself. So Arash's arrival was like that sense of mirror, a reflection,
Yeah.
because Arash brings the past. And Nazanin, as we go through the film, is realizing more and more that she has actually changed. She's
Yeah,
moved
I
on.
wrote it down. If I didn't have someone like you, I wouldn't think of the past. Ooh.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it's sort of like, because in when you any country really, and
Mhm.
particularly in Australia, because we are quite free. I mean, in all
Yeah.
aspects, and for an artist, like that freedom of expression is quite key and can completely rebuild who you are and give you a new sense of your own voice
Mhm.
and expression. So I think yes, it's at the core of it is about love, but it's about how migration affects love, and affects, as a result, affects us individually, and then it's to choose whether we start questioning and the decisions
Yeah.
that we had made in the past and whether they're still relevant to us. And I think this is also something I see quite common between a lot of couples that even come together here. They start questioning
You're like people
their
watching and
bond.
then writing down like
Yeah,
toxic
it's the
behavior.
perhaps yes, it's the bonds, right? Like you
Yeah.
bond over a lot of different things. I think when you're, let's say in this case, you're in Iran, you bond
Mhm.
over quite a lot of different things that you would hear. So the choices you're making are contextual or affected by the country or the context you're living in.
Yeah. I was definitely on Nazanin's side. It was interesting to explore because there was culture of like coming into a new country. So Arash was, trying to adapt and trying to understand this whole new. I think there was even a line of him saying, I don't even know who you are, or I feel like I don't know you. anymore
Yeah.
and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but is it gender too? Like,
Yeah.
let her be free. Let her live.
I'm glad on you're on her side. Yes, that's good. Yeah, I mean, of course, this question of gender, and I mean, we weren't blind to Osama and I weren't blind to the fact that we're, two men writing this story, and there are like three characters in this. So, I guess writing Arash felt a bit more natural. But when we were looking at Nazanin's character, we had not cultural consultant, but consultants from our female writer friends and
Yeah.
actors who sort of helped us ensure that, at least for us, to feel a bit more confident
Well, if you need
moving
another,
into production.
I'm not Iranian, but if you need another gender consultant.
Sure, sounds excellent. Yeah, but I mean, it's the, I guess, so always quite important to me, that responsibility you have as a filmmaker when you're representing
Mm.
something, and it's that balance. Like, I always stay true to what I would like to share, of course, but I think, I never want to deprive myself of other people's expertise, knowledges, understandings, and in this case, I mean, it was vital to get advice from
Mm.
female colleagues and friends to have this well-rounded character. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's portrayed so beautifully, I might add, by Faiza Alavi. She's done an amazing job. Yeah.
Gorgeous. Yeah. When you have a multifaceted, sort of story with characters that have layer, even the way we're talking, it's not just one sort of theme. It's not just coming to a different country. It's not just exploring a love that you had before. And, even though I am playful about the gender thing, I think a lot of it also, I think a lot of people can resonate with the fact that Arash was feeling like he didn't understand the dynamics of the relationship anymore, which, regardless of gender and culture and that sort of thing, it's a scary thing to be, because you have this person, you feel like you're going to have them forever, maybe, and sometimes you grow in different sort of ways. And I saw that as well, of him not just like, I'm a man, but it's like, she was my person. We were going to have a whole life together. Where do we go now?
Yes, and I think he's trying. I mean, he's really trying to quickly adapt. But as I mentioned, it is something that comes with time, that sense
Yeah.
of discovery. I think, when and this is, I've been a migrant all my life, so I've moved so many times with my parents. And even, if I just focus on my experience migrating to Australia, it's a long time ago, but it's something that I think it has shaped who I am, and also affected all of my artistic activities. You always sort of feel in between, and you want to create a bridge, and between the cultures, which is in a way a bridge in yourself between your identities of how and who
Yeah.
you relate to. And I think that's a process that requires a bit of time for people to sort of recognize. I think in the film, Nazan is just at the verge of recognizing that uh, that she is different. She has moved on, and for Arash, this is shocking. As you mentioned, like, they were each other's person when they were back in Iran, but that feels like a million years ago now. It feels quite far.
Because it's scary. It can be
Yes.
scary
Yeah.
to, have your life set up and also have it change as well. I want to talk about the name of the film,
Yeah.
Tennessine. I'm not sure
Yes.
how much you want to keep it as a surprise for the audiences, but we talk about Arash being a man of few words, but he knew how to cut with those words.
That's true. Yeah, I think that Robert Rabi's character Nasser. That's because Arash is an introverted person. When it's with other people, what you notice in the film, he has a lot to say to Nazanin actually.
Yeah.
So it's this sort of, also the idea there for me was how even introverted characters, when they're in public, they're very quiet, or when they're in an unfamiliar
Yeah.
terrain, and they're quite quiet. But when they are with someone that they feel close to, he's a chatterbox. He's got so much to day and very precise, in fact, as you said. So Tennessine, yeah, I guess it's not a huge secret. It's a nickname of Nazanin's character in the film, and it's how he sees her. I think he has this idea of like finding words that sort of
Yeah.
explain something quite, I guess, substantial in his mind. So a lot of expressions, a lot of metaphors, which I think tells me that he's a character that is quite idealistic
Hmm.
and he lives with ideals. And I think um, his journey in the film for me is about how he is trying to grasp reality over those
Yeah.
ideals. If
Love
that makes
that.
sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely right because it is a lot of theoretical and then he's actually living through his own life. He's actually coming
Yeah.
into his own skin as well. But, you know, since we already talked about tennis, if someone were to call me a harmful substance, I would be fine. Highly unpredictable, highly unstable. I was like, I was almost falling in love with this man. And I'm like, excuse so sweet,
Yes.
so quiet, and he just like cuts through. I'm just like, oh.
That's true. That's true. He means well. He means
He
well.
does. He does mean well. Absolutely. Before I get to my last question, I just
Sure.
wanted to touch on the fact that you were or are a screen producer lecturer at the University of New South Wales, and
That's right.
I kind of just want to talk about how is it being a creative in Australia, but also shaping and understanding the future of creatives in Australia.
Um, okay. Yes, it's another big question. I mean, I obviously enjoy teaching. I teach screen production at UNSW,
Mm.
and it's perhaps because we make films with students. I actually try to do their assessments with them, so I also stay active and creative. Um, I think, I heard recently we're not called filmmakers anymore. We're called content makers. And I made a little joke about that in
That
class
face?
last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, but I mean, overall, I think, we're looking at digital media or video to be the mode of communication, mode of conversation. People tend
Mm.
to want to read less and watch more, and they like things quickly. So I can't really predict the future. As you have seen, there's been a revitalization of classics. People do analog photography now. And I think it's just a wave. What I am pretty sure is we will continue telling stories now. The form may change or not, but this urge to express will continue regardless of how and what the format is. And I'm quite excited about the future.
So am I. I think stories are the richness of this country. And I think
Yeah,
if we can continue to speak on our own truths and our own experiences, that's really where we're going to get to some real cinema, whatever sort of
absolutely.
format that looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you definitely achieved that in Tennyson, even though the name I'm going to fight with. we finish off we finish off our reviews with a recommendation. So what would you pair with Tennyson as a double feature?
At the Sydney Film Festival.
You can, or any sort of film, even your own other film. That's
Um, okay, right. Oh, well, my own other film. I'd be a bit biased. Oh, look, like the programs. I mean, I guess there were some inspirations, and when you said that, like, what would you pair it with? I sort of
Mhm.
those inspirations came to mind. I think Tennessine is definitely a different. I mean, it's definitely a different film to those, but I would pair it with Burning, which is a much better
Beautiful
film.
Korean
I would say
film.
it's a
No,
Korean film.
I can
Burning is
actually
an
see that,
incredible film.
but I can see
Um,
how these would be paired together. Gorgeous, gorgeous.
Yes. Yeah, I think I will land on that one because it was a film that I really liked, and the triangular relationship there
Yeah.
sort of inspired me a lot. Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be a tasty double feature, Amin, I tell you.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much.
no worries.
Congratulations on the film, and I'm excited for the
Thank you.
discourse that comes out of this as
Thanks very much. Thanks for
well.
your
Thank
time.
you.
It was fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah.